Well, hello there, motherfuckers, and welcome to a review of Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue. I'm gonna still be looking at Let's Go Pikachu this month. That review is coming up. I just wanted to kind of do this as a precursor, talk about the game that it's based off of, and the origins of the series. So, Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue. I bought Red first, and it was, a real experience. I will never forget 6th grade playing this game for the first time. And not only that, but reading about it in Nintendo Power. There was a comic book inside, seeing all this artwork, and the early artwork for Pokemon. Like, if you look at the early promotional artwork, it's a thing of beauty. I mean, I think I prefer this to even the anime or any of the more recent art. Everything just had a very interesting texture to it. So, go to Google Images, go to Pokemon fan sites and check that art out. It's definitely worth a look. So I read about this new sensation that was in Japan. It was actually over there since 1996, and it was taking Japan by storm. Pocket Monsters, and it was being rebranded Pokemon, and I couldn't wait to see what this was all about. Like, I don't think I really knew really what this game was going to entail. I was just really fascinated by the designs of some of these creatures. I was like, this is just something about it. An RPG. I wasn't really into RPGs at this time. I was mostly a platformer guy. Sonic, Mario. I think most people know where my bread is buttered when it comes to video games and what I prefer. So this was really like my first foray into RPGs, and I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. So let's talk about the game itself. So this was in the midst of the hype, and this game, they needed to get it right, because this was going to be the introduction to the whole phenomena that was going to take over the whole entire country, the whole entire world. So this was a very simplified RPG. You had potions, you had revive medicine, you had a party that you could carry it around with you. But the interesting thing was that you had creatures that you would be, not you yourself wouldn't actually be fighting in battles, but creatures, and you would be limited to 6, and you would catch these creatures, and you'd have to decide which ones you would want to have on a team. Now, this is very consistent in Final Fantasy and Chrono Trigger and a host of other games where you'll have to choose, who you want in your party, who do you want to fight with. And, when you've got 150 creatures to choose from, well, making those decisions is very, very tough. And building a well-balanced team, there was a lot of interesting elements. You have Pokemon that have different types, and they represent the elements. There's grass types, fire types, water types, electric types. And, some of these have very appropriate weaknesses and advantages, such as electricity having an advantage over water, and water having an advantage over fire, and fire would have a disadvantage against water. So that was a really interesting element that they brought in. That wasn't very, I think it was maybe the first time we saw this in an RPG. Forgive me, I'm not a big time RPG historian, but Final Fantasy and other RPGs didn't really do this at the time. So it really made for a lot of interesting battle choices. Now, a lot of people will talk about that this is a stripped down game, and I remember reading the review in Nintendo Power. And guys, go hunt down that issue of Nintendo Power. Nintendo Power actually gave a very above average but not great review to Pokemon Red and Blue. They gave it like a 7.1, I remember, and said it was a very simplified game with simplified graphics. And, even though it was on the Game Boy, they said how it was a very dumbed down RPG. It was very simplified, and, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but they didn't really exactly give it a glowing review. And considering that this is one of Nintendo's glowing franchises in Pokemon, I find that to be really interesting look back, a very interesting retrospective, that even Nintendo wasn't that crazy about their own major franchise. And there is a lot of truth to that it is stripped down when you compare it to all these other RPGs that are out there. And, it was very stripped down. But, even more stripped down than, say, Earthbound, for example. But those are some of my favorite RPGs where they tried to do something a little different with the RPG realm. Tried to get everybody involved in it who wouldn't normally play an RPG and doesn't like all the micromanaging. But you can still do a lot of interesting things here. Switch around the team. There's TMs where you can teach the moves to different Pokemon. You can teach them new moves that they wouldn't learn on their own. And you level up these monsters. They start from a low level, some around like level 2, level 3, and you can level them all the way up to 100, if you've got the free time to do so. Now, a lot of people looking back at this game, were all the way up to like all the big advancements that were introduced in all the future Pokemon entries, held items, contests and everything. And this game, when you look at it, it's very bare bones to what the series would evolve into later on. So a lot of people have kind of turned their back on these games in a way. I'm not saying that people hate them, but they get a lot of flack. And they talk about, a lot of fans talk about the imbalances, such as in this game, special defense is not a thing. You just have attack, defense, speed, and special. And because of that imbalance, psychic types who have, some of the highest special stats in the game, they run roughshod. If you've got a psychic type, such as a Kadabra or a Hypno, you could go to town and you could pretty much wipe this game clean and not really have that much of a challenge. Not to say that it's a total cakewalk, but your adventure will definitely be a lot easier if you have a psychic type on your team. So people have a problem about that. They kind of talk down about it, saying that there was a lot of imbalance issues. There's even the move Focus Energy that doesn't even work in this game. It's just kind of a move that wasn't coded properly. There's a lot of glitches, but to tell you the truth, the first playthrough I had, I've never really experienced these glitches. You kind of have to go looking for them, like the missing number glitch. There's a lot of different things that you could do, people hacking into the game. So, you can't really say that the game itself is glitched when you're going to look for these glitches and they're not very noticeable. So, people have a problem with this game because of those imbalances and they feel that it's a deeply flawed game. But, I gotta say, still playing this game, and I'm just saying, I just finished another playthrough of this a week ago for this review, and I have to say I don't really find it to be that much of a problem. There's a fair amount of challenge, but it's a pretty easy game, and I didn't even have a psychic type this time around, to tell you the truth. It's not really imbalances. It's like, if you really find that to be a problem, just don't use a psychic type. Problem solved. And I think as far as this, if we're talking about design choices, this game just has the best Pokemon designs. I mean, Charizard, Blastoise, Venusaur, Pikachu, Raichu, Gengar, Haunter, Onyx, just all these very iconic looking Pokemon. I'm a very big fan of Gold and Silver, and I actually do prefer those games to this one. But I gotta say that, these are the best designs to date. The original 150, I mean, these are best designs. I mean, they're the most recognizable. I mean, because you talk about the Pokemon boom of 1998, and these were the first creatures that we would see. We wouldn't see anything from Gold and Silver until the Pokemon movie in 1999, when we got a load of Marill and a few other Pokemon. These are the only Pokemon that we got to see. So, understandably, you gotta, I might be a bit biased, but these are the Pokemon that I was looking at for over a year, and they just got cemented in my mind, and they became my favorites. Now, Gold and Silver, though, I think, is probably a better game. I think it's a better adventure. I think some of the towns are more fleshed out and they look more unique. But, when you look at the SS and the Pokemon Tower, and we got to talk about that in a moment. And just there's different locales, there's islands in this game. There's a lot to look at and do. There's a safari zone where you could go in and catch rare Pokemon and walk around the park like you're on a safari. And, there's just a lot of different locations that are very, very iconic, but they would be outdone in Gold and Silver with some more interesting locales and different landmarks that kind of fleshed out the world a bit more. And plus, you could return to Kanto in Gold and Silver. Now, they might not be as expanded as they are in Red and Blue, but, it's still a better game. Now, we got to talk about Lavender Town and Lavender Town Syndrome. So, in this game, it's a pretty happy game. There's monsters, Pikachu's super cute, Charmander, very charming game. And I think that's also why Pokemon really managed to be as great as it is. It's kind of like the Dragon Ball series. It's if it doesn't get anything right to you, you could at least say that it's charming. You could at least say that it's cute. There's something about it that even for the most staunch critic of this series, you have to say that it gets something right. And that something right has got to be its charm. There's just something about it that makes it stand out. So, it's the cute factor, it's the charm factor, and then Lavender Town comes along. And it just kind of hits you like a ton of bricks. It's a graveyard for Pokemon. The Pokemon Tower, you come into this town and you hear this creepy ass music. Deek, 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 deek. And it's like, what the fuck? Where am I? Did I just get transported into a different game? And then you start talking to some of the NPCs in the town, and you find out that this is where dead Pokemon have been laid to rest. And then you start thinking to yourself, well, okay, these creatures are actually capable of dying. It's like a very happy world and everything with bright, upbeat music. You're listening to the music and, Viridian City and Pewter City, and you're listening to these upbeat tunes and everything, and then they just the subject of death just comes out of fucking nowhere. And there's just so many, there's craziness. You see that these people in the tower, these NPCs, have been possessed by ghosts there. Cubone's mother has been murdered by Team Rocket. And we haven't even talked about Team Rocket yet. Those are the antagonists in this game. You're a 10-year-old boy and you're fighting up against a criminal organization that's like has hundreds of members, and somehow you're just plowing through all of them. I mean, unrealistic, but hey, this game was for the kids, and I was a kid at the time too, so hey, what a protagonist ready to take on the world and just take it to a giant crime syndicate. Pretty inspiring, I have to say. But man, they kill Cubone's mother. That's pretty fucked up when you think about it. I mean, it really is. You kind of look back on this and you're like, well, that took a really dark turn real fast. I mean, geez. Speaking of the music, people have talked about kids in Japan getting headaches due to the frequencies of Lavender Town. It's crazy. If you guys haven't heard about that, you check out some of the creepy pastas on that. It's numerous videos on YouTube. It's really interesting and at the very least entertaining. And hey, we're on the topic of music. I mean, this is an iconic soundtrack. Or whether it's the battle music, the gym leader music, the music in the towns, the theme in Mount Moon, Oh, such an iconic soundtrack. I mean, you know, it just gets it all right. One of the biggest criticisms that I have of this game is sort of the art for the sprites. They're just inferior. Pokemon Yellow would come around and they would just completely change most of these sprites, and they would make them look a lot better. Now, just for entertainment's sake, check out the sprites in Pokemon Green, the Japanese exclusive version, and man, whew, those are a train wreck. You gotta go check those out. Some of them are downright laughable. But yeah, I mean, they're pretty charming. So, some of these, I mean, man, you know, like Haunter looks fucking just crazy in this version. I mean, he looks super fucking evil. It just, some of the designs, though, just don't really quite hit it. And also, the way some of them look from behind, just look, you know, when you're battling as them, some of these Pokemon just looked a little messed up from behind. Sprite work wasn't great from behind the head at all for a lot of the Pokemon in this game. So, you know, not a lot of criticisms. To me, you know, I'm biased. It's an iconic game, so, you know, I give it a lot of breaks. I think a lot of people give it a lot of shit where it's not really well-deserved because, you know, it's the first of its kind. They were working things out. It was kind of, you know, just seeing how this whole franchise was going to play out. And then you saw as the series went on, they added a lot of things to it. So, you know, it's kind of like giving the first Super Mario Brothers shit. It's like, you know, the hardware was not as advanced. They would move on, you know, later on and figure out how to do more things with the capabilities of the Game Boy. They would move on to the Game Boy Color, the Game Boy Advance, and so it's not really fair to compare. So, you know, you kind of have to just say to some of these fans that they're not being reasonable when they're giving Pokemon Red and Blue so much shit. It's just unfair. And, yeah, I mean, so this game, I mean, you know, as many times as I play it, I never get tired of it. It's a real fun adventure. It's very satisfying. You know, I'm not really into catching all the Pokemon. I've never had a complete Pokédex. But, you know, I just kind of like going through battling, trying out different teams, and, you know, just generally having fun with the battle system. It's so simple, yet so satisfying. And, you know, if I could come back to this game for so many years and keep playing through it and not getting tired of it, that tells me that this is a game that is really worthy of my attention. And yours too. If you haven't given these Pokemon games a chance, then I don't know what you're waiting for. They're stripped down, and, you know, I think that's the thing that some people might find unappealing about them. They're stripped down. They're not, you know, they don't have as many features. But I think there's just a lot of fun to be had. There's a lot of variety. And if you haven't played, you're missing out on a big chunk of the story here. And just seeing where it all started should be a lot of fun. If you're, you know, a real Pokemon fan. I'm not saying you ain't a real fan if you don't want to play this one. But I'm just saying it's definitely worth your time. So thank you for watching, guys. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Hit a thumbs up, hit a thumbs down, depending on if you enjoyed this video or not. Click the bell so you get all the notifications when I post all my new content. Check out some of the content I have posted here. And thank you for watching, guys. I will see you for a Let's Go Pikachu review in the near future. And guys, I'll see you next time.